Our long program presentation will be introduced by Club Vice President for Programs, David Fain, Classification of Insurance. Our Sergeant at Arms, Ken Grant, multitasking today. And by the way, with the classification of marketing, which has, prepared him in so many ways for multitasking. Ken will be monitoring your questions, which we invite you to enter through the Zoom chat feature. After Mike's prepared remarks, Ken will present the questions for Mike's comments. And by the way, Mike, I see you on the screen. We're going to need you to share your own screen and slides. That should be doable, but if you need a moment to get that pulled up so you can set it up, this is your 20-second warning.
Okay.
David Fain, thanks to your program committee for bringing Mike Howard to our forum today. And now, David Fain. Calling David Fain. So Mike, I guess we'll ask you for a brief self-introduction beyond what we had.
Okay, hang on. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Yep.
David. Go ahead, David.
Okay. Mike, thanks for your patience with our technical issues today, and we'll try this again. So take it from there. Loyal Rotarians and honored guests, it is a pleasure to welcome Mike Howard to our club today. Security, both domestically and internationally, has been Mike's specialty throughout his career. Most recently, Mike served as Microsoft's Chief Security Officer for 16 years. Prior to that, he spent 20 plus years at the Central Intelligence Agency, otherwise known as the CIA. In other words, he can pretty much find out anything and everything about us without us even knowing. Today, Mike will talk with us about his experience and his first book, The Art of Ronin Leadership. No matter how successful you have been or are as a leader, you are never finished with your leadership journey. You must forge your own path to leadership to become truly masterless when it comes to leadership acumen. Mike and his wife Janice have traded in the dark winters in the Pacific Northwest for the sunshine of Las Vegas, where he serves as the vice president of the Metropolitan Police Department Foundation Board of Directors, and as an avid James Bond fan, enjoys martinis that are shaken, not stirred. Thank you, Janelle Johnson, for curating this program for us. Mike, the podium is yours.
Thank you, David. Can everybody hear me? Okay.
Yes, but Mike, you'll want to swap screens. You're showing us your preview, not the full slide.
Okay.
It may be one of the icons right under the,
Let's see.
just to the left.
There we go. Can you see the slides now?
Yes, but we're seeing your preview. Your other monitor, you must have two monitors, and your other monitor is showing the.
Yeah. If you go to your display settings right above your slides, you should be able to reverse it there.
There you go. Swap.
Got it. Okay. We're good? Can you hear me now? Okay.
We can hear you fine, and I think even with this, if the screen doesn't have what Jeff coached you on, I think we better get moving.
Yep, I agree. Well, thanks very much. I appreciate all of you inviting me to your Rotary Club meeting. It's an honor to be able to talk to you just for a few minutes. I was born in California. My father was an Army enlisted, and he was there for 20-something years. So I'm an Army brat. My mother is Japanese, so I'm half Japanese, and that kind of actually goes to the art of Ronin leadership. For those of you who don't know what Ronin is, back in the days of the ancient samurai, when Japan had a bunch of feudal lords, they had, samurai, master swordsmen who protected their lands and their property. When Japan was centralized as a government, there was no need for these Ronin. And so the samurai, I should say. And so the samurai were dispersed. They roamed the land looking for work, kind of like the old gunfighters of our Wild West. And Ronin means masterless samurai. And when I've always wanted to write a book on leadership. I've had, like all of you are leaders, I've had different experiences in my leadership journey. And as I was writing the book, it came to me that not only is it a journey, which I'll talk about, but it's also, at some point in your own leadership journey, you'll learn from people, people will mentor you, but then at some point, you will have to forge your own path, become masterless, so to speak, and develop your own style of leadership. And so as I was writing the book, I never intended to be sort of autobiographical, but it just turned out to be that way. So the book is really about my leadership journey in 3 specific areas in my life. Once, when I was a young police officer in Oakland, California, after I graduated from San Jose State University. I was there for a few years. I'd always wanted to be a cop. And it wasn't until I read a book about the CIA and their exploits, well, OSS, the precursor to the CIA, and their exploits in World War II that got me interested in intelligence. And then somehow that journey led me to Microsoft. But when we talk about what I mean by the art of Ronin leadership, if you don't get anything else out of this presentation, it's the idea of being selfless, right? And I'll get to more of that later, but it's not about you. It's about the team. It's about the people that you are leading and hopefully growing their careers and developing their careers. And it's also about making mistakes and owning up to those mistakes and hopefully learning from those mistakes and growing from them. We're not perfect. We're fallible. But I think you use those as teaching lessons. And then it's about a journey. It's about, it never ends. When you think that you've nailed it as a leader, you've probably started regressing, right? You're always going to be pushing forward, always going to be learning new things. Even in retirement, I still learn from other leaders and watching other people that are, especially in a lot of my former direct reports. I see them in leadership positions now, and I learn from them as well. My journey started in Oakland, California. Like I said, I was a police officer. I didn't have any inkling about leadership. I just wanted to be a good cop. And it was a very exciting job. Oakland, can be a very violent city, but I think, we did a good job in policing that. And in the book, I talk about a mistake I made where I arrested some prostitutes for an offense. I used a penal code section that I thought was apropos above and beyond the regular prostitution statute, and thought I'd done a great job. My sergeant called me a few minutes or maybe an hour after I made the arrest, and he said, "Look, I admire what you did in trying to find a penal code statute that would apply, but basically use the riot act. 2 or more people gathered in a public place to commit a criminal activity." So I mentioned that because this guy, Sergeant Nishihara was his name. I don't know where he is now. He's a wonderful man. The direction of my career could have taken 2 ways in terms of my ability to take risks. He said, "Don't do it again." But he also said, "Look, you have any problems, young Mike Howard officer, just come to me and talk to me about it, and we'll get you on the right path." He could have made me feel about as low as you can be, but he actually uplifted me. And I thought that was a really great lesson I learned from this officer, this sergeant, and it's carried me through all the different phases of my life. I eventually ended up at CIA. I spent 22 years there working primarily counterterrorism issues, but I also took 6 years to kind of digress from what we call operations and going after bad guys. And I was in HR for a while. We helped develop a career development program for our officers. Mentoring, I worked on the first mentoring program we ever did, and I became a lifelong advocate and proponent of mentoring, and learned a lot. And I learned a lot about this thing called selflessness from one of my supervisors and mentors, and a guy named Bill Servanek, who unfortunately passed away about a couple of years ago. But one of the things he told us was, and when a couple of us were working for him, we were in teams going around the world, and he decided to make us team leaders. So we're going to lead teams. And he said, look, the only thing you have to remember is you've got to switch your way of thinking. So you're always going to be worried about your career. You're always going to be worried, thinking about making promotion and getting ahead. Everybody wants to have great career development. But now your job is to take care of your team first. They come first, their development, their issues, the things that they need to get the job done. That's your focus. You come second. And if you keep that mindset, then things will work out. You'll take care of your troops, and in turn, they'll take care of you. That was one of the abject lessons I learned at CIA. One of the other things I learned in terms of making mistakes, and I talk about making mistakes, was I had a supervisor in one position that I wouldn't consider to be a great leader. It was more about himself than anything else. And he was attacking one of my officers unjustly, saying that she didn't have the requisite qualifications for the job that she was doing, which was wrong, and I was able to dispute that. But in my kind of haste as a young leader, I fired off a message to him, I think he said something like, and I noticed in your last communication, or in her last communication, she had 4 misspelled words, right? And then so I shot off one saying, well, I noticed in yours you had 6 misspelled words, right? Pretty juvenile. And I went up to his boss, our overall boss, who called me on it. He said, look, your boss is wrong. I will talk to him, but your response is also wrong. And then I hark back to Abe Lincoln. I'm a voracious reader, like I'm sure a lot of you are, on leadership books. And Abe Lincoln, back in the day, when he was mad about something, would write a letter and then stick it into his desk drawer and wait a few days and then decide to write another letter. So that was a lesson, right? Lesson learned about, especially in this days of internet. Be careful what you say, how you say it. If you're mad about something, take a step back. But those are some lessons that I learned at CIA, among many others, right? And then it led me to Microsoft. I ended up the first year at Microsoft actually running the security for Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer and a lot of the executives there. And then the next year, as those of you are aware, working in enterprise, things can tend to move quickly. And at the end of the day, they made me chief security officer based on my background. I had 16 wonderful, wonderful years there. And here's a picture of Bill. One of the things I learned from Bill was his ability to listen and to focus. When I was interviewed by Bill for the job, I had 45 minutes with him. And for those 45 minutes, there was nobody else in the world except Mike Howard. At 45 minutes and 1 second, he was off to something else, laser focused, but he listened. He listened to the security protocols that we wanted to implement. He actually, at the time that he left Microsoft to go do full-time foundation work, he sent a quick note just saying, hey, thank you, Mike, for showing me that you can do security and not really kind of basically get in my way. Let me conduct business. And at the end of the day, one other thing I admire about Bill, and it's a leadership trait, is this picture was taken as he was leaving Microsoft. He had a party for all the folks that were part of his support people, security, logistics, finance, legal. And it was on Microsoft campus. They had food and they had entertainment. And he took a picture with everyone to show his gratefulness for the folks that ostensibly didn't make money for the company, right? We were a cost center, but he appreciated what we did to protect him and to protect the company. And I think these little gestures are important in terms of thanking the people that work for you, because a lot of HR professionals will tell you, people don't leave companies because they hate their job. Some do. Most of them leave because they can't stand their supervisors, their managers. So you have to be cognizant of how you treat people and treat people the way you want to be treated.
Mike, this is Jimmy. Just a quick intervention. You mentioned that you had his picture there. We're not seeing that, so you may need to advance a slide, or
Yeah.
maybe I misunderstood.
Yeah, he's right there in the middle next to me. Yeah.
Be
I
the
mean,
art of Ronan, which is, I think, your first slide.
no, I think I've been advancing the slides. You're not able to see the slides?
Not yet.
Oh, wow.
No, but Mike, you're doing a great job.
Yeah.
Even if we
Yeah,
can't see the slides.
Yeah, that's fine.
On
That's
the
fine.
words.
That's fine. Okay, I'll just keep going. So, the idea of being selfish versus selfless. Now, which one are you, right? Just think about that as you're dealing with the people that are working for you. Doesn't mean that you don't care about your career. Of course you do, but you have to make that mindset. And to me, that's the biggest thing that we have in the leadership management arena, is that there are a lot of subject matter experts who get into positions of leadership, but they don't, they're great at their jobs. They're not really great at taking care of people or looking at career development or thinking about what it means to be a leader. It's getting the job done, but you have to have people to get the job done. That means you got to take care of them. So the idea is just, to be a selfless leader. You be, you're servants of the people first, right? And I think that's important. Also, what's important is mentoring. Throughout my career, I always had mentors and I always mentored people. And I think I always told my mentees, I learned as much from them as hopefully they learned from me in the time that we were together. So that's very important. If you're not mentoring other people, you should. And no matter how far along you get in your journey of leadership, you should have a mentor. And the other lesson here is also, you're not trying to be perfect. You're going to make mistakes, but learn from those mistakes. Making mistakes is better than faking perfections, right? Be honest. Have true emotional intelligence with your team. They don't expect you to be perfect. They expect you to lead them, guide them, help build a strategy, take care of them. When stuff happens, and mistakes inevitably will happen, if you're in charge, you take the hit. You don't just say, well, Joe did it or Jane did it. You take the hit, and then you take care of whatever disconnects that were below you. But that's part of your job. And if you can't accept that, then you shouldn't be in a leadership position. And then the last thing is, leadership is a lifelong journey, as I mentioned. It goes on forever. I still read, I still study, I'm podcasting. The book was really something that was cathartic for me. I always wanted to write it, and I actually learned a lot about myself as I was writing the book. And I think I've got more books in me. I've kind of got the writer's bug, but it's a journey. And if I can't leave you with anything else, just continue that journey, take care of your team, be selfless, make mistakes, own up to it, but learn from them, and keep forging, keep going forward. And then the last thing is, there was a guy named William Goldsmith, who's a leadership author. I used to give leadership books to my team all the time. He wrote a book that what got us here won't get you there. So no matter how successful you are, always keep pushing, and knowing that there are other goals, there are other mountains to climb. And so don't get comfortable in a leadership position. Always push. Try to be uncomfortable as much as you can, and you'll be able to see the fruits of your labor and the fruits of your team's labor as you forge ahead. So that's basically what I had to talk about today in the 20 short minutes. I want to keep it within the time frame so we can get some Q&A. But I have contact information if you want to talk to me anytime afterwards. And again, I appreciate the short time that I was able to spend with all of you.
Thank you, Mike. I want to kick this off with a couple of questions that have that sort of are bubbling up for me as I listen to you. I'm curious, out of your extensive and very unique background, what's a word that you find is a thread through all those jobs?
To be completely honest, and I mentioned this in the book, there is a thread called insecurity. And the reason I mention that is that no matter how high I got in any particular enterprise, there was always a piece of me that said, did I belong here, right? The imposter syndrome. And at one point in my CSO career, I ran 2 industry boards. And I remember, by this time, our organization had done a lot of great things in the security world. But I'm sitting in front of 14 other CSOs of major enterprises, and I'm thinking, am I good enough to actually lead these folks, right? And so there was this thread of insecurity, but that's okay if you recognize it and then understand that if you've done the heavy lifting to get to where you are. Like the first time I opined something in front of them, they didn't look at me like I had 2 heads, right? They actually kind of, yeah, that makes sense, but that's the one word that goes through all of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I appreciate your honesty about that. Hey, Mike, before we go on, I'll have you click off of the presentation just so that we can see you. That would be awesome.
Okay.
3, 2, 1, click. All right. All right. So one of the questions that just came in, and I've got some more for myself too. Is spirituality connected to the art of Ronin leadership?
It is. I don't talk about it too much. I'm a Christian, and I believe in Christian values. Whatever people want to believe in, that's fine. But certainly there is. I think there has to be some spiritual element in a leader to not only be able to think about their behaviors and how it affects their team, their troops, but also your ability spiritually to be reflective about yourself and maybe be honest about the things that you need to improve as well. So I believe so. And a lot of the book, I take passages from the Book of Five Rings by a samurai named Miyamoto Musashi. He was like the most famous samurai in Japan back in the day. And he was not only he was a classical warrior poet. And he wrote a lot of books, and this one, his greatest one, the Book of Five Rings, which goes in really a lot of the philosophy of martial arts and sword fighting and being a warrior. And so, yeah, there is a deep, great bit of spirituality, I guess, embedded in the book.
I'm curious, when I hear, and I've heard this from a couple of other people too, when I hear the word Ronin, and you start digging into that, it seems almost negative. How am I just misled about how I was raised with Japanese culture, or is there there's a parallel world to this? Because I mean, a lot of this, everything you're talking about is leadership. You're not ever talking about death and really sharp swords and samurais, right? Yeah. Bring me there for a second. Bring us all there for a second. Like, what's the difference? Because you mentioned before, which I thought was interesting, like the Wild Wild West and people just looking for a job.
Yeah,
I can't imagine that it's all about samurai in the Hollywood eye.
No, not at all. Ronin in itself can have a negative connotation in Japanese culture. Depends on the Ronin, right? Just like in the Wild West, there are good guys, bad guys. There are good Ronin and bad Ronin, right?
Okay.
The classic, there's a movie called The Magnificent Seven, was based on the Seven Samurai, which were about Ronin who protected a village, right? But the idea of what a Ronin is taking away the sword play and the martial stuff. It's the person has no more master, right? They go where they want to go and they do what they want to do, but they're still learning. They're still samurai at heart, and samurai were warrior poets, and they learned art and they learned painting and writing. And so, to me, when I think about Ronin, it's, again, as I say, your journey of leadership is always going to be, you're going to learn from other people, and you're going to grow, and you're going to make mistakes, you keep growing, blah, 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 until you get to a space where now I'm not trying to emulate anybody else. I can still learn from other people, but now I know who I am. I'm grounded enough in who I am so that I can forge my own path. I can take the best of different people that I've seen that I admire, like a Colin Powell, for instance. And then within my own DNA and the way I'm built psychologically and intellectually, I go forward and forge my own path of leadership so that one size doesn't fit all. Like, everybody can't be, whoever. And so to me, that's what Ronin is about. It's not about the martial stuff. It's about,
Yeah, that's awesome. You know who I think on our group is a Ronin is our president, Jimmy. That's just my opinion. A couple of quick questions because we've only got a few minutes left. So to someone on the group, it sounds, and I would agree, it sounds like a lot like servant leadership. They're curious if you know the author Robert Greenleaf.
I mean, I know of him. I don't know him personally. Yeah.
Okay. We didn't want to like know him to like get ball tickets or something. What is the skill set of the background to be the head of security for an organization like Microsoft with all of its challenges that it faces?
Well, I mean, I think number one, I used to say you have to have a strategic mindset. Certainly, I came into the job with functional skills. I knew intelligence, I knew counterterrorism, I knew law enforcement, all those things, and so did my team. But the skill sets are, I always just tell my team, we're business people first. Business happens to be security. You have to have a global mindset, which we didn't at the time I took over. We were very US centric. You have to understand the business, different verticals in the company to understand what are their drivers and how do you fit in with them so you can support them. So you're not thought of as just the security people, but you're a business enabler. Those are the things that we tried to push, and we actually had some programs where we brought revenue into the company as a cost center to prove that we had a seat at the table. But I think really the strategic global mindset and remembering that you're not the break glass in case of emergency person. You are an enabler of the business of Microsoft. That means you should be as integrated with the finance world, the legal world, the sales world as much as you can, and also understand that what fits in Redmond, Washington doesn't fit necessarily in Istanbul. I saw too much of the kind of leadership from headquarters. Colin Powell had a great saying, the field is right until proven wrong. And we tried to practice that in our organization.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, back to servant leadership. Does the concept of servant leadership include not asking those whom you are leading to do anything or working in a situation that you would not be willing to do, or context that you would not be comfortable in?
Good question. I would say yes, but of course, at a certain point in time, my job is not to do the job of my direct reports or their teams. That's their job. My job is to do strategy and kind of forward thinking. But absolutely, if you're not willing to, in a crisis situation, get down and dirty with the team and manage the day-to-day crisis, or be able to, like for instance, one of the things we did when I first got there was I wanted to vet the current guard force that we had there. And so we went out at nighttime, myself and another one of my direct reports, 1 o'clock in the morning to 5 in the morning, another night, 11 at night to 3 in the morning to see if they were doing their job. The vetting, the due diligence, I expect my team to do that, but I wanted to show that as a leader, I'm willing to get out there and also do that as well. Certainly you hire the right people, the right subject matter experts, they can drive your programs, leaving you to be strategic. But absolutely, you have to go to the well and be willing to go down there or with your team when necessary.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to ask one last question, and maybe 30 seconds on each answer. It's a two-part question. Sounds like a couple of traits from your very worst boss you've ever had, and a couple of traits from your very favorite boss you've ever had.
Sorry, you broke up. The traits from the worst, what?
Oh, just a couple of traits from the very worst boss you ever had, and a couple of traits from the very best boss you ever. I'm curious of the confluence between those two things, because it sounds like you're always learning, right? The Ronin in you is always learning. I'm curious, those bookends, worst and best.
Self-centered for the worst, and never thinking about the welfare of the team. Always thinking about themselves and their promotion and how they're going to get ahead and how they're going to, look in front of the higher ups. In terms of the best, they took the time to mentor you, to help groom you, to teach you, or to give you other mentors. That was a common trait. And similar to Sergeant Nishihara in my young years as a police officer, if you made a mistake, you know, and your intentions were great, but you made a mistake, they called you on it, but they left you feeling like a human being when you left the room, right? And they made you feel like, okay, I can go forth and maybe do it better next time. They didn't leave you like shattered with your ego and feeling like you're not willing to take any more risks because you don't want to get your hand slapped anymore.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's very cool. Mike, thank you so much. One, for being flexible with our Wi-Fi problems and our beginning today. Very interesting, and thank you for your honesty. Fantastic. For a guy that, you know, his thread is insecurity, I think you've ended up doing very well for yourself.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Awesome. So thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Take care.